22nd, 2 years ago. My friend Tony leads me down this long, bare corridor, past several people in uniform and several rooms with bunk beds. He opens a door and motions me in. It's a mid-sized room. Some of the furniture has been moved up against the walls, clearly to make room for the chairs that are now all over the room. I make my way through this narrow aisle between the chairs, turn around, and face my audience. This is unlike any audience I have ever addressed before. There are all kinds of people here, young, old, white, black, Hispanic, Asian. A lot of them have tattoos, piercings. Some look at me with hopeful eyes, but most of them have this blank, expressionless look on their face. I turn to my friend Tony. He looks at me expectantly, like, "You can do this, Vincent. You can set this room on fire." And I'm asking myself, what am I doing here? At Wallkill Correctional Facility, a prison in upstate New York, addressing 50 inmates. I could not have chosen a tougher audience to speak to on the topic of how to be the richest person on the planet. And so I begin to talk to them. I tell them I'm from Africa, and I have a couple of stories to share with you from Africa. The first is about Idi Amin. You've probably heard of Idi Amin, this dictator from Uganda. So one fine day he gets up and he says, "I'm going to expel all the Indians who live in Uganda. This isn't their home. They're using our resources. They've got to leave." So they left with nothing. No property, no money. They went to other countries. They went to England, Australia, America. And they had to start their lives over. But they had ideas. They came up with business plans. Some people took a chance on them, gave them loans. And the incredible thing is, within 2 years, 3 years, some of them became millionaires again. They rebuilt their empires. So I asked the prisoners, were they really poor? I mean, despite losing their external wealth, they managed to rebuild it. It means that they might have had another kind of wealth, which is internal, which no one can take away from you. They have the skills and smarts and the ability to run and start a business and make it successful. And once you start thinking about internal wealth, you start wondering what other kinds of qualities belong to this category of wealth. What are the qualities we admire the most in people, in humans? Courage, humility, strength, generosity. And when you come right down to it, who are the richest people on the planet in terms of internal wealth? I ask the prisoners. Someone says, Abraham Lincoln. I say, not bad. He's certainly one of the greatest leaders in recent times. Another says, Gandhi. I agree. He brought the British Empire to its knees without firing a single bullet. Someone mentions Mother Teresa. Truly one of the most compassionate and loving people that any of us in this room have ever heard of. But I was waiting. A hand goes up. Nelson Mandela, he says, and I say, yes, that's the other example from Africa that I wanted to talk to you about. We all admire Mandela. But was he always that great? Was he born that way? The truth of the matter is, he started out with great talent, but he grew into that greatness. How did he do that? Where did he do it? For 27 years, Mandela was in prison. And that's where he grew to become great. If we can figure out how he achieved that internal wealth, maybe we can follow the same path and become the richest people on the planet. So how did he do it? When he got into that prison, they tried to crush his spirit with all the punishments and psychological pressure that they were putting on him. But Mandela knew this. If I give in to this pressure, then I'll be useless to my people. I can't help my people. I can't liberate them. So I owe it to them to stay strong. Once he made that decision, something very, very special began to happen. The more pressure they put on him, the stronger he became. So I look at the prisoners and I tell them, seriously, if I were you, I wouldn't bother thinking about what my life would be 10 years after leaving prison. Maybe people will start treating me like a normal human being again. I wouldn't bother with that. I would focus on day one, the day that I stepped out. My vision would be about going home and being unrecognizable. They'd say, Dad's back, but he's so different. The way he talks to us, the way he cares, the way that he's so helpful, his strength, everything's changed. He's 10 times better than anyone in our entire social network. He's now a role model, the role model for the family. The fact is, when you step into a room, it's not written on your forehead, formerly incarcerated individual. All the mistakes and weaknesses that you have in your life are not written on your forehead. All people see is the way you carry yourself and the way you react to different situations. And if you're 10 times better than anyone they've ever met, they have to acknowledge it. They will admire you. And so these prisoners could turn into some of the most admirable people on the planet. As I'm looking at the prisoners, something begins to happen. I notice their faces lighting up. They look more joyful and hopeful. And then something else begins to happen that is totally unexpected. And it's happening inside of me. I'm looking at them and thinking, gosh, you mean I could give hope to people like this? I could put meaning back into the lives of people by addressing audiences like this? But a voice in my head tells me, Vincent, don't go there. You're a doctoral student at Rutgers. You have to finish your PhD. You don't have time for this. And even when you go back to Africa, you will never have time for this. But a different voice in my head checks in and tells me, Vincent, you just had an idea that could transform the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, putting hope and meaning back into their lives. And you would walk away, do nothing? Could you live with yourself after that? And I knew the answer to that. I could not. And so in my heart of hearts, I committed to this mission, and I said I would do everything possible to take it forward, to help people find meaning in their lives. A few months later, I'm volunteering at an event organized by Defy Ventures in New York. Defy is so named because the word means to do that which is deemed impossible. Defy takes formerly incarcerated individuals and trains them to become entrepreneurs so they can depend on themselves. And the CEO, Catherine Hoke, would get us volunteers to introduce ourselves. So after I've introduced myself and I've talked about having gone to Wallkill, as I come down the stage, a man walks up to me and he says, so that was you? I told him, what do you mean? He says, that was you. You're the one who came and talked to us at Wallkill. And I look at him, I say, "You were there?" And he says, "Yes, I was an inmate at Wallkill, and you told us that if we could not find a job, we could go to Defy in New York and they would train us to become entrepreneurs. So I came out, I did just that. I've been training over here, and in 3 weeks' time, I will launch my business. And I would be so honored if you could be present at the launch." This was just far greater than anything I had hoped to see in such a short little time. So 3 weeks later, we're in Harlem. I meet his mother, I meet his fans, we're having a great time, and I'm telling myself, isn't this tremendous? The following year, I was invited again to Wallkill. This time they made a big deal out of it. So not just that small room that I talked about. This time we were in the gym, and I addressed 300 inmates that day. And I told them about their colleague, Keishan, who had been there the following year and was now running his business in New York. And they were so excited. They wanted to do this. They wanted to know more. So I put Defy in touch with Wallkill, and they started talking about starting an in-house program in the prison. Soon after that, they rolled out in 3 prisons in New York. And believe it or not, a month ago, they sent an email telling me that they'd gone national and they had been approached by the state of New York to go to all the prisons there. So this thing is kind of evolving. It started small, but there's so many possibilities to it. Of course, I'm back in Africa now, and I'm helping an organization called Nafisika, which is trying to introduce some of the ideas that Defy does in New York to Africa. And among my students at Strathmore University, Strathmore Business School, I challenge my students to take on problems like this one. I didn't set out to solve this problem. I cared more about poverty, but I didn't have any solution for poverty. But this problem, which I wasn't looking for, found me. It had the makings of a problem that I could do something about because of the training I had in the psychology of meaningful work. And so I challenge my students to take on huge problems and try and solve them. Why? Because if you want to be the richest person on the planet, you need a big incentive. It has to be something bigger than yourself. Think of those examples: Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. They had big dreams. They wanted to change the world. They were living for something greater than themselves. And when you take on a mission that is that powerful, that gives you the energy to then turn those opportunities that you meet every day and grow in internal wealth. So I would hope if you get a calling like that, you see something that you can do, don't walk away. Say yes. There will be times when you feel, I can't do this. I'm not even in control of all the things that go on in my life. And I would hope that the words that I will leave you with, that I shared with the prisoners at Wallkill, will help you. These are words that gave a lot of encouragement to Nelson Mandela whenever he felt that he wasn't in control. So even though he was in prison, these words made him feel in control. And they come from a poem called Invictus. I carry this paper with me, and I'll read you the lines that gave him so much encouragement in case it works for you as well. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Good luck to each and every one of you on your journey. Thank you.